do that. Okay. All right. Let me spotlight Vanessa here if I can for everybody. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I have Vanessa Riley here, who we've invited to talk about her book that came out, Murder in Westminster. I'm Chrissy from the Township Library of Lower Southampton in Feasterville. Let me just get my questions back up here. And then if you guys have any questions too at the end, I know I'm going to try to ask some of the things that I know Sarah wanted to talk about before she left. So I guess to start, Vanessa, can you tell us more about who you are for those of us here or who will be listening who, are just kind of learning about the book and maybe aren't familiar with you as an author? And
Sure. My name is Vanessa Riley. I have about 22-ish, 23-ish books out. My very first book was traditionally published. Books 2 through I think 17 were independently published. And at that point, Entangled, publishing part of Macmillan, were like, hey, Vanessa, we like what you're doing over there. Would you like to publish for us? And I'm like, who are you and how'd you get my number? But I wanted a bigger audience. I wanted to bring, I write about from 1750 to 1830. I call those the freedoms years because everybody wants freedom during those times. You've got the Americans, those rabbles in North America, they want their freedom. The French want their freedom. The interfaith fights between the Catholics, the Protestants, and the Catholics and the Jesuits and the Capuchins. Everybody wants freedom. And then people within the West Indies who've been transported from Africa across all these nations, they want their freedom too. No one can understand that. And so I write about these people. I write about people primarily diverse cast, because history is a lot more diverse than what we know it as or what we see it. We watch movies like one of my favorites is Pride and Prejudice, the A&E version, the 1988 version, or 98 version. That is the only and true version with Colin Firth. I must digress and say that. But there's a point in this in the film where Darcy is looking, he's searching for Lydia and Wickham, and he's sweating so beautifully. And his little boy runs up and gives him a tankard of water or ale, and he's searching. But on that particular street, in that particular section of town, you should have seen at least one person of color. There's between 10 and 20,000 people of color, Black people, free people in the streets, working in the houses, having businesses. Some have become millionaires just by simply building businesses, because Britain is the land of opportunity at this moment in time. They're ahead socially in various different ways. And so I bring these kinds of interesting factoids to stories, whether it be historical romance, historical fiction, or historical mystery. So I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. So good to be here. Now I thought I read too before you were writing books. You have a doctorate in mechanical engineering, don't you?
Absolutely. I have a doctorate in mechanical engineering from Stanford University. I have a master's in industrial engineering and engineering management, also from Stanford University. I have a bachelor's and a master's in mechanical engineering from Penn State University. Okay. I've worked for General Motors. I've worked for NASA. I've done some internships with Hewlett Packard, a lot of different companies on the West Coast, and I've also done some telecommunication startups. So very analytical on one side. I actually use my superpowers for good now, and I apply it to research. I like to, the facts are out there. I always find it very, very fascinating how unfortunately people look at television and or what has been allowed to be published for a long time, and they assume that's the way history is. But when you actually go back and tower through papers and journals and newspaper articles, you find out that fact is a lot crazier, a lot wilder, and a heck of a lot more diverse than any source of fiction.
Yeah, I liked that you had the one character to her cousin Lady
Florentina Sewell,
Florentina,
yes.
who loves math, and it's just a man with calculations for sailors to get home. So I was curious, because of your background, if that came from your own love of math, and if it was important for you to bring in these types of accomplishments for women during a time when, like financially, I guess they're very dependent on men and things, but they still have their own interests and things that they.
Mary Edwards is like one of the women. She's one of the first computers, literally. She's doing the math. Her husband had somehow gotten a contract to do calculations for the Navy. And so this is latitude and longitude calculations based on wind speeds and all this sorts of stuff. I hear he wasn't that great at it, but his wife was. And she was so good at it that when he died, they kept her at it. And so Mary Edwards is somebody, I think stories should be written about her. So I created a woman, Florentina Sewell, who is her assistant. So we get the math fun, but once again, it's showcasing a little bit of the hidden histories that we should know about, we should celebrate. And, who doesn't love a girl that loves math? It's math. And then you get all the kind of running math jokes now, because you have to have the corny, the person. So, she gets dragged along with Abigail in different places. So she's calculating the odds that they're going to live.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. Can you tell us, I guess for those, I'm not sure who here has read the book and who hasn't, but maybe just for the people who haven't, who are coming tonight to hear about the book and about you, maybe more about what the book is about, maybe more about Lady Worthing and her background and the historical, I guess, context with the abolitionist movement she was involved with during the time and how it stalled, in case people aren't aware of that as well.
Excellent. So this summer, my historical fiction, my second historical fiction, and I do what they call biographical historical fiction. So I find these women, true women who've done really interesting or crazy things, and I bring them back to you. And System of the Warrior was about the two women who shaped the Haitian Revolution. While I was doing this research, I came across this really odd fact that when Haiti becomes free, all the abolition movements in the world stop. So Wilberforce, Elijah Macaulay, Thomas Clarkson, the fathers of the abolition movement are stunned. They don't know what to do. There's no more appetite. There's no votes that can happen to usher in abolition. It's kind of like, hey, we were good with y'all being free, but now y'all want to run stuff? I don't know about all that. What if you're a free person of color living in London during that time frame and seeing what's going on and how the politics have now shifted? What do you do? How do you respond? So that is somewhat of the impetus of Lady Worthing. I'm a big mystery buff. I love the grittiness of Sherlock Holmes. I love the epic scale of a Deanna Rayburn. I love the clues that we get in a Sherry Thomas, but I also love Walter Mosley. And so if anybody knows Easy Rollins series, there are crazy things happening. People are dying all around him, but you're doing life with Easy Rollins. So you see if the rent rates have gone up or there's shopping centers, you get all this background politics kind of things happening. And I was like, it would be so interesting to have a character in London and you could see this background politics. Because I purposely set the book in 1806. So once again, Haiti has just become free. The abolition movement is stalled. but London is also in mourning. Lord Nelson, who is like the hero of all heroes, has died, and his funeral has just happened in the earlier part of the year. The lion of their parliament, the guy who can count the votes and make sure bills have happened, he has just died. So you've got this no more appetite for abolition, Parliament stalled, the country's in chaos, and King George every so often is starting to have these moments of losing lucidity, getting ready for the eventual time of when he goes fully mad and there's a regency in place in 1811. So it's a dynamic, crazy time frame. And I was like, what happens if you're a woman who has privilege, has money, so that you've got agency, but you also feel a responsibility to try and make things happen, to make things right. So that's Lady Worthing. And I've given her, lots of, you talked about the cousin, Florentina Sewell. The Prince Regent allegedly had a man who got things done for him. So that's kind of the impetus of, The Godfather, Von Neil, or Neil Von, the man about town who knows where the bodies are buried. He's got, dealings everywhere. He's your guy. And then you have the neighbor, who is also, because my husband's a military man, so I love throwing military men in all situations. But you've got, we talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome and all these different things. There are a lot of wars going on during these time frames. And men are coming home and they're broken. What's happening to these men? I love shining a light on some of these different cases. So her neighbor, who might be a slightly sexy Moriarty type guy, is a war hero. He's back from the war. He was actually standing next to Nelson when Nelson dies. He's got these two beloved, well-trained greyhounds. She has a terrier named Teacup. The dogs are fighting. She believes his two dogs are intimidating hers. You kind of can figure that's not what's going on. He's tired of the fussing. He's put up a fence between the two properties. And one night the dogs are going crazy and they walk out there and they see his estranged wife dead on the fence, on her side of the fence. And even though she's Lady Worthing and she has privilege, she's like, who are they gonna believe? Me? Or the Navy hero next door, even though it's his wife and people know they were having problems. So they work together to try to figure out what's actually going on. And it's the beginning of, I hope, a long-running series. There's I threw a lot of stuff in the first book, because they're going to be unraveled. Relationships, statuses, all these different things are going to be unraveled. And Abigail herself has both Scottish and Jamaican heritage. Those are two populations that have second sight. And second sight is that deja vu. I've been here before and kind of thing feeling, right? I have a friend, she knows the house that she's going to buy because she's already had a dream about it. And she just walks in the house and boom, and she gets it, the Scottish side. And so I was like, what if we just, put a little of that? Not much, just because, it could be interesting. It's another obstacle. Because if you don't know what it means, because nobody really, you never know what you're dreaming, if it's just a dream or anything like that. You never know until you know. So it's not something that can actually help. It can actually hinder poor little Abigail as she's trying to figure things out. But it's a nice mishmash of different things that you're going to get the feeling of the times. You're going to see Abby doing life with her friends, and she's going to be solving murder cases.
Very nice. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, there's going to be more. Are you working on the second book at all in the series yet?
Yes, Murder
Yes.
in Drury Lane.
Oh, okay, great.
Yes.
Oh, yay, I'm excited. Okay, so my next question is, how much research has to go into writing a work of historical fiction like this? Is it challenging to write a work of historical fiction when there's this level of historical accuracy that many people expect? I feel like with these types of work of fiction, and I feel like that sometimes writers can get criticized, if they take too many liberties with their work of fiction during, a period
Mhm.
setting and that sort of thing. So I know one of the women who left earlier, she was really interested to hear about that as well. Yeah, your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I have a timeline from 1750 to 1830 of everything that happened in the world. I go into all of my projects as these people are smart. They are not going to do anything. There's always a reason for whatever they're trying to do. And so on this timeline, I get very specific between like the different wars, the factions, and actually the politics. So I've gone through the British newspaper archives, and so I find articles talking about what the politicians are doing, or talking about Lady Jersey, or talking about some of the different aspects and things that are happening, because I want you to feel like you're there. If I ever mention a street, it's a real street during that time frame. If I mention restaurants, those are real taverns, cafes, etc., because I want you to feel what they're feeling. I want you to eat what they're eating, which, I apologize in advance because some of those things, we have 21st century taste buds. We're talking about, the 1800s. They got some weird stuff sometimes. I'm gonna try and avoid the weird stuff because, I want you to have fun in these books. But the clothes, the mannerisms, the politics, the religion, all these things are important facets of life. How people make money, how money flows through an economy, the different social tiers. I want all that to be as authentic as possible. And I write about the exceptions to the rules, right? For everything. When we read books, we don't necessarily want to see what the average person was like. We look for the people who can be heroic. We look for the people who did something interesting, survived something great. I'm bringing the best aspects of people. Was everybody fair-minded? Of course not everybody wasn't fair-minded, but I don't think we want to read those books. I think we need to have a little fun and, kill a few people in the process. But I have never deviated from a timeline. So if I know the facts are, I put that down. In many of my books, I'll put full bibliography. So it's like, if you don't believe me, here, you can take a look for yourself. And I always, as I talk about doing research now, I always talk about ask a librarian, because you guys are like wonderful people. Y'all can save us so much trouble. It's amazing. So, I wanted to be as accurate as possible. And there's a rule, I call it Duke math. There were only 28 dukes in the entire Regency, and only 2 were hot. There are over 10,000 books written about made up dukes everywhere. So if I find one person that did anything interesting, that really is 328 books based on Duke math. So I'm going to apply that principle. If I find one woman that did something fascinating, that's 328 books.
Oh, sorry, just trying to unmute myself again
Not a
here.
problem. Not a problem.
Let's see here. Let's see. Um,
Chrissy, do you mind if I ask a question?
yes, I was gonna ask, you guys have any questions? Yeah, before I go on here, because I don't want anybody to lose the chance to ask. Go ahead.
But Vanessa, you mentioned earlier historical fiction, which is a favorite genre of mine to read, historical romance, and you mentioned, was the third one just plain historical books, or did you
Historical
mention
mystery. Historical
mystery?
mystery. Mhm.
So from your perspective, and the way that you write, and I'm sad to say I was unfamiliar until tonight, and now I know exactly what my next book is going to be. I got to get my feet wet and get into these. But can you describe those three topics and how you view them, where you draw the line between those?
Okay. So for historical romance, for me, it's very atmospheric. I put you into diverse communities within London or the West Indies, or even show you the migration, because people in the West Indies, particularly mixed race people, would often send their children or people who had mixed race children would send them to Scotland, Ireland, and London for education. And people who sent their daughters wanted them just like just like everybody. They wanted them to marry well. They knew education was a thing. And so I write romances on that. That was my first entry into this. Particularly because at the time when I started writing, that was the entry point. You didn't see narratives singularly focused on women, particularly women of color, Black women. You just didn't see it. And the doors were slightly open for romance. And people love a good story. And it was a natural avenue. But as I do this research, I'm finding these women who have done incredible things. Dorothy Kerwin Thomas is the end all of my holy grail of research. It's 6 years of putting her life back together. And I'm not talking about continuous. It was like, find something here, find something there. But I knew that Jane Austen, when she wrote her books, she often wrote about real people. She would change the names to preserve the innocence, but she would write about real people. So there's a real Mr. Darcy, or was a real Mr. Darcy out there. And then when I found out that her father had a really good friend who had plantations in Aruba, when I read Sanditon, and the wealthiest woman in the book is a mixed race woman from the West Indies, I had a feeling there was a real Miss Lamb. And because, when I'm writing these books and I am making these women of color have means and money, and yes, they can even marry a duke or an earl, et cetera, or a wealthy person, there was a lot of pushback. That never happened. This didn't happen, yada, yada, yada. But I wanted to find Miss Lamb because I'm like, look, Jane Austen, who was a contemporary writer writing about her times, if I could find this woman, I could show you, lift it up. And I'm doing all this research, and I happen to stumble across a cartoon of Prince William Henry lovingly embracing a Black woman in a hammock. And the cartoon is done by a guy named Gilroy. Gilroy's is one of the satirist of the day. His works are always appearing in the newspapers. But he's also kind of an ist. He's a misogynist, a sexist. You just put any ist you want to put on there, that's your boy. I personally believe he has a problem with women. Anytime he draws women, he makes us look stupid, garish, crazy. And if he gets to draw a Black woman, he does not hold back from any stereotype that you can imagine. Big noses, you name it. But when you look at this particular cartoon, the woman is drawn beautifully. The embrace is loving. She is not the joke in this piece. This is a tattle. This is what your prince is doing in the West Indies. So I followed the rich man, and you find out that Prince William, future King William IV, is the sailor king. He and his boys are going to all the islands in the West Indies. He is commanding a frigate. They are actually breaking brothels. They're partying so hard in Jamaica. I mean, first of all, how do you break a brothel? But that's beside the point. They break a brothel. He has to pay for it the next day. It's so bad. And this is every island he goes to. The same craziness happens until he gets to Dominica. When he gets to Dominica, now his friends are writing back, and men write way more gossip in their letters. And they're saying he's with that woman again. That Dorothy is a handsome woman. And then I finally found one that says he's dancing with Dorothy Kerwin at the Mulatto Ball. So I had a name, and I just start researching this name, and it's crazy. This woman started out her life enslaved. She ends up saving money, buys her freedom by the freedom of her family. She builds businesses across the West Indies. She has an affair with Prince William. He actually smuggles her in his frigate back to London to show her the world. She goes on, and in the colony of Demerara, she has so much wealth at this point in time, the men are worried. So they begin to tax her and women like her, saying, you guys should have stopped the slave rebellions that are happening. Dorothy is upset. Yeah, they believe that these women of color and the Black women that have money should have stopped a slave rebellion. Like, you want to jump out in front of people that are, you got machetes and coming in. Oh, heck no, that ain't happening. But it was a way to control it. And these women were smart. They realized that if men could change the laws, property laws, and use taxation, that they could be depleted of their fortunes in a generation. So she literally goes from Demerara, below the equator, all the way to London. And she forces a meeting with the Secretary of War in the colonies. His name is Lord Bathurst. And she convinces him how wrong this tax is. The man listens. He not only abolishes the tax, he fires the governor. She goes back home to Demerara, a hero. Now, I tell you this long story, but this is a woman who was famous during her day. There are so many pieces of letters. Her will is archived in the UK, but she has been erased from our lexicon. That woman needed her own book. I didn't even think that the world was ready for that book, but I happened to go to the historical novel conference, and I told a story, just as I told you here, and my editor from William Morrow bought it at the table. She was like, I want to see, this needs to be a book. This needs to be told. So when I find these women and I rebuild their lives, because once again, I believe people were logical. Let's put as much in there. That is a biographical historical fiction. That's Island Queen. That's Sister Mother Warrior. Sister Mother Warrior is the two women, Abaduritori, who was a Dahomey warrior, who literally trains Jean-Jacques Dessalines how to fight, how to position troops, the man who liberates Haiti. And Mary Claire Bonheur, who was the first battlefield nurse, predating Mary Seacole and Florence Nightingale by 30 years. She literally gets on a mule train with young women, and they save the city of Jacmel from starvation. Personally, they wore white. I wouldn't wear white on a mule train, but that's just me. I cannot criticize these folks. But when I find these power women, I want to bring them back in these stories. So to me, those are biographical fictions. And then, like I told you, I get these little nuggets that don't quite, it's not a person, but it's more of a symptom, or it's a fascinating thing. And I'm weaving all of those kind of facts into the Lady Worthing series. So I'm going to take you back, because of all this research I've done, I'm going to take you back to these places and wrap it around the history of the time, so that you get not only an engaging mystery, but you're going to feel like you're there, you're walking the streets, you're seeing things through new eyes. So that's the expanse of what I do. I'm really enjoying the historical mystery fun, and just to be able to put these stories together. I truly love historical fiction, because these women need their dues. We need to know their names. I wish my father's from Trinidad and Tobago, so he would tell me stories, and I would like, yeah, okay, Daddy, you just want us to go to sleep, so you tell this. Great. You know, half those stories were true. And I wish I'd listened a little bit more. Probably help me with some more work I need to do. But it's an exciting time. Publishing is open in a way that it hasn't been. And libraries like yours and independent bookstores, readers are embracing these stories, and it makes a difference. I think that, you know, books change people's lives. Libraries are gateways to changing people's lives. And so I'm very thankful for opportunities like this to be able to talk about my books, and just, you know, order all of them for your catalogs.
I think it's fascinating, and I appreciate that insight, because, you know, I kind of had a tunnel vision of it's historical fiction, or it's biography, or it's history, you know, and there's a lot more blending here. And I'm delighted that you're pursuing these strong, independent women who really were, they were out front. I mean, they really were. at a time when women voting, what are you, crazy? What are you thinking? But it's very exciting. I can't wait to dip into some of these stories of yours, and I look forward to the ones that are coming in the pipeline.
Yes, I just I was talking with my editor today. So next year's historical fiction, you guys get it here first. It's called Queen of Exiles. It is the story of Marie Louise Christophe, the Queen of Haiti, who after a coup has to restart her life in Europe. And she literally is a queen in Europe, even hanging out with ex-kings of Bonaparte's brothers, the ex-king of Westphalia and Holland and or these different places. So it's wild looking at history, because your brother was the one who was invading Haiti. Y'all know this, right? Now everybody's in exile at a spa. I'm like, they told you fiction is the craziest, is crazy. I mean, facts are crazy. I can't believe this.
Sometimes you just can't make it up, can you?
I was like, did I read this right? And for my historical fictions, I always put a not only a detailed author's note, but I put a bibliography, because I tell you, some of this stuff is crazy. Y'all need to see this.
Now, can I ask you another question? I don't want, this is probably a little bit farther afield, but I'm always fascinated when I find a strong writer to find out who it is that they read.
Ooh,
I mean,
yes.
You don't have a lot of time on your hands if you're writing this many books, but I imagine at some point you need to turn your own stories off and read something else. So who inspires you?
Yeah, typically I have a 2-week period between books where I try to do nothing but read other stuff, because you got to get out of your own head. You got to do that. And you know, I love Beverly Jenkins. One, you know, Hilary Mantel, unfortunately, who just passed away, is a favorite. Let's see, Sadiqa Johnson's Yellow Wife, Kate Quinn's Rose Coat, and I have to get into a Diamond Eye, because you know, women and guns, just it's a beautiful thing. Goodness gracious. I love Kristen Higgins. She is such an emotional writer. I absolutely adore her. Old favorites are Octavia Butler and Maya Angelou. I love Maya Angelou. Has a lyrical way that she writes, and I've been told that I'm lyrical. And so I really do appreciate that. But it's everything. Beatrice Williams is another favorite. You get I love to be transported. And you know, within the first 2 paragraphs that she's taking you someplace and putting you someplace. So those are the things that you know, but it's, I go to my mom. My father was a storyteller. My mom was very much into literature. So she made sure we read Shakespeare and Thoreau and you know, just getting us immersed in language is amazing. So you get this constant tension of left brain, right brain kind of thing going on.
Yeah, your background is absolutely fascinating to see you take the leap from something that's as technical as where you have been to just launching off into these new topics. It's really, it's cool.
Oh, well, I was nerd kid when I was in school, and I was good at both math and writing. You know, I was on the debate teams, math teams, academic teams, you name it. That, you know, check the boxes. I still have gold medals from the science club when we went on different competitions. But my mama sat me down. She was like, and I started winning like the governor's writing competitions and things like this. My mom sat me down. She's like, baby, you always need to be able to pay your bills. She was absolutely right. Math does pay the bills, because you didn't see, I mean, there was, you have to go back to see a Maya Angelou, but you didn't see contemporary people making full-time when I was in school, while I was in college. You didn't see as many as you see now that are writing. You don't see that. There's like these, it's almost like sometimes the publishing industry opened up and then it closed, and opened up and it closed. And when I was back in school, it was closed. You were already in it and you were doing well, or you weren't. And so that's one of the reasons I applaud, independent publishing, because my first book was traditionally published, but the browner my stories got, it was my agent. We got some of the best rejection letters I've ever seen in my life. We love her voice. Does she have anything else? This is a great story. We don't know how to market it. Honestly, I prefer those answers, because the worst thing that somebody can do is to join a publisher, give them your work, and they don't know how to publish it, or they don't know how to market it, because it becomes your fault. And you become, well, we tried it and it didn't work. And I never want to be we tried it and and it doesn't work. So now the door is permanently closed for anybody on that thing. So independent publishing helped me build an audience. And it got me the attention that it needed, so that when traditional publishing came around, it was continually building. So it's good. We're in a good space now. We're in a good spot.
It is very open. I mean, go into a bookstore today, go to Chrissy's branch of the library, and it's a real cornucopia of offerings. There's so much out there.
Absolutely. I encourage everybody who you can find a way to get your message out. But take the time to do the work. Take classes, get your work critiqued. This is craft. There's sometimes, this is one of those cases where quantity is not necessarily quality. Take the time and get it right, and love what you're doing. I love every book. Yeah, deadlines may make me a little crazy, but I love the process of creating it. I love editing even more, because now you've got something to work with, and you can really go in and sharpen the motivations and layer in the aesthetics and layer in the emotions. That's the best time of editing. There are people who can just sit down, write, and it's perfect. I'm not one of those people. I enjoy the editing process. I love it. And I love the insights that my editors bring. They always bring something I didn't think about, a new perspective, or they'll be like, hey, I would really like to know more. You hinted on it. I'd really love to know more about X. That's so much fun.
It shows that you truly enjoy that collaboration, because so many people, I think the ego would get in the way, and it's like, how dare you chop that chapter? What do you mean? I need that to push the story along.
Exactly. No, you and that is a difference, because I got friends who are like, no, let's listen, let's understand. And another piece of advice I tell to writers is, no one can actually tell you how to fix it. Every time you hear something, that's a symptom. There's something wrong. There's something pulling them out of the story. And they may tell you X, Y, and Z, but that may not necessarily be how to fix it. But listen to all of the things that are pulling them out of the story, and then rework the story. And sometimes you have to chop your darlings. It's gotta go. You just save it, put it in a file. You can cry over it later. But sometimes shorter is better. Sometimes rearranging is better. But listen to the feedback, and it'll make you a better writer.
Excellent. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Eileen. Eileen, actually, was there anything else that I didn't really ask with that Sarah wanted me to ask earlier too? I know we were talking about the Washington Post, the perspectives that were in there for Vanessa earlier tonight too. about the historical accuracy, and I'm trying to think if there was anything else that she was interested in knowing about with that or with any of the.
I think Vanessa went on as she was telling us her story to answer a lot of the questions
Yeah, okay.
that Sarah had about people have an obsession that, you know, if it happened in 1757, then this area wasn't like that, and you know, you're straying too far from what the reader is perceiving as the truth. When we were talking earlier, we were talking about the fact that fiction is in the title here of the genre, and therefore, oh, the author may be using their imagination. How about that? It's fiction. But you're showing us that you have kind of a fence of the historical context that's there that you are working within, and you are helping these people tell their story by filling in the dialogue.
Absolutely. I mean, the most, unfortunately, we don't find very many women's journals or letters anymore. Queen Victoria's daughter went and edited her diaries. So you can't actually trust them. We're very fortunate to have Anne Frank's journal, because then we know what she was feeling. So I can tell by leases, by official paperwork, by birth certificates, birth registries, where people were, their children, and that and then the dates of things that are happening, because if something is happening in your colony, you know about it. You're talking about it. If you're doing commerce, sometimes it's going to be affecting you. So those are things you know. But what we don't have, and to me, this is where the fiction part is, the motivations. We're not listening to those conversations. We have no records of these conversations. So reimagining those conversations, reimagining the emotions and the reasons why somebody is doing whatever they're doing. To me, that's the fun. And reconstruction. But if I can, like I said, I find the streets, I do, the engineering me, I've got architectural drawings, I got house plans. You've got to understand the materials, because I'm very much an atmospheric writer. So I want to hear if they're walking on oak, it's going to sound different than walking on pine. The floorboards, because there's sometimes you can in this particular book, in Murder in Westminster, Abigail's townhouse has the normal boards. So they're all different sizes. They squeak and random and all sorts of stuff. Stapleton Henderson, her neighbor, has pulled up all of the boards, and they're all uniform, so that they don't squeak as much. So when you're in each other's houses, there's a difference in these houses. And so doing research on the architectural designs and things like that for these different areas was extremely important to bring through. So I haven't violated a timeline. So if once I know the timeline, I'm not violating a timeline. I try to be as accurate as possible for fabrics, for things that were manufactured, language of the time frame. Although I do understand I'm writing to a 21st century audience. So I won't do all the vernacular of the time, because that's going to be distracting. I want you in the story. But I will try and season it with the period words so you get that bit of flavor. I try and make sure my costuming is 100% what they would have worn, what they would have had access to, the correct representation for socioeconomic status. I try and get all of those things right. But was it pink? Was it rose? Was it tan? Was it, sky blue? That's all imagination. Because even their portraits, because the portraits have darkened and things like this, you can't tell anymore what the eye color was unless you can find it. Because I have real people show up in the book. Wilberforce is in the book. I think they're blue at this point in time, until I can find it called out someplace. You got to just go with what you suspect or what it's going to be. So that to me is the dividing line. Somebody even asked me once, why don't you just do a nonfiction? And there's enough stuff there to do it nonfiction, but to me, I want the masses to read these, need to know about these people or see these situations. And, you know, commercial fiction, historical fiction, that has reach. It has more, to me, possibilities, because, you know, not as many people as I'd like read nonfiction, particularly period pieces. And, you know, you also get to highlight what you want to highlight. When you know, you get a choice. There are scenes like in Island Queen, there are a couple difficult scenes. And the order that I chose to put them in is to lessen some of it. You see Dorothy in the beginning of the book as an older woman. She's got some problems, but she's safe, she's secure, she has money, she's funding a school in London when you meet her at the beginning of the book. So that when I take you back in time, when she is enslaved, and some bad things happen, you already know she survived this. You already know that she made it through. And to me, that's a safer spot to take my reader through. So I try and think about these things as the way I present them. With a nonfiction book, sometimes you have to go chronologically to tell the story, and you don't have the option of doing things to think about your 21st century reader. Make sense?
It absolutely does, because typical history, you know, when we report it, it's a straight line. But in many of these books, we see people reflecting on how the past influences what's going on now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you have a lot more leeway with the way you want to present the story. Do you ever include any of that in your author's notes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
would think that a lot of what you shared with us tonight would be nice for your fans to, if they haven't had the opportunity to listen to you speak directly to your fans, it would be nice to have some of this in the notes as well. So that's great. I'm glad you do.
Yes, I'm one of those. I have a long author's note, as well as a bibliography, just because I want other people to do research. I want other people to write stories. There's so many stories that need to be told, but some people get stuck at not knowing where to begin or how to begin. And if I can help you a little bit, I'm going to help you. And so we've got the references there.
Oh, this has been so much fun. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you guys. This is fun, and sorry about that screw up at the beginning.
Oh, that's fine. Did anybody else have any questions before we end? If you want to unmute or you put anything in the chat, I can ask it for you. Just double check and see. Okay. Okay, I don't think anything else is coming through for now. Oh, okay. Someone else said thank you very much. Okay, yes. Thank you for taking these pieces of history, Vanessa, and bringing them to life and letting these voices speak through your stories. I really, I love the diversity and everything that you're bringing here in these publications, and I look forward to more. So thank you for joining us so much tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.